Salam alaikum. I hope you're doing well, guys. We were off for about 2 weeks, but we're back again and we're back stronger and better. Today, I'll be talking about the art of communicating, or the skills required to be a better communicator. And I'll be drawing from my experiences and from my mistakes. Now, these are recent occurrences, so I'm sure that you and I are going to have a good laugh throughout this podcast. So we shall start this podcast our usual way then. Salam alaikum, man zakin. Guten Tag, Buenos Dias, Bon Dia, Jambo, Habari, Auniche, that is Bambara, which is our recently added language, Majo, Maha. Anytime you are listening to this, bonjour, bonsoir. Now to the podcast. Communication is a very important part of life. As a matter of fact, if you look at everything we're trying to accomplish or everything we're trying to do, it is in one way or the other connected to communication. Now, over the past weeks, I've had a few experiences which have informed or better informed my opinion on communication. I think about last week, I interviewed probably the greatest comedian in Ghana, who is Clemento Suarez. And one of the things I loved about the interview was that Clemento Suarez is an extremely humble human being. That could be perceived by even the blindest man on earth. And I told my friend that the interview was actually a success because Clemento Suarez is just such a great communicator. Now, during the interview, I found myself stuttering all over the place, losing my train of thoughts. I was not my usual self, just for you to have an idea. So I asked myself a series of questions. Why was that happening to me when I was speaking to Clemento Suarez? And the conclusion was that I held Clemento Suarez in such a high esteem that while also speaking to him, instead of me to be in the moment, I was thinking about, am I doing a good job? Am I asking the right questions? Am I impressed? Simply put, was I impressing him? That was my priority in the middle of the podcast. So those who were paying close attention could realize that I was distracted. I was being, pulled in all directions, which is not a bad thing. I mean, trying to impress somebody you look up to is not a bad thing. But then, how it translated itself in my communication was terrible. So yes, during the interview, I was enjoying the interview. At the same time, I was thinking, oh my God, he's such a big deal. Oh my God, this is the Clemento Suarez. This is the Clemento Suarez. And I must give a shout out to my cousin, Julia Dampare, aka Dampizi, for connecting me to Clemento. And without her, I certainly wouldn't have been able to have such a wonderful experience interviewing Clemento. So my utmost gratitude. So the lessons I drew from this interview were simply this. Firstly, no matter who you're speaking to or with, you are having a conversation. Right now, I am having a conversation with you. Even though you are an imaginary person, I have to think about somebody and speak to the person. I'm having a conversation. When you reduce everything down to simply having a conversation, you realize that it is not so complicated. The second thing is, whoever you are, whatever you do, however you do what you do, the best way to improve yourself is not to doubt yourself in the process of doing it. It is to finish doing it and later revisit it. So, if I had just approached the interview from a normal standpoint, asked the questions I would normally ask, not rush and in effect stammer and stutter, then I would have been able to look back on the podcast, analyze it, and ask myself, how can I be better? That is not to say that even when I made the mistakes, I still can't revisit it and actually correct myself. I can certainly do that, and that is what I've done. Another experience I had quite recently was, I think it was yesterday, I was speaking on a radio platform in Ghana. I'm not going to mention the name for for my personal reasons. And when I started making my points across, it was more or less a debate. When I started making my points across, I was extremely passionate. Those of you who know me know that I have two styles of communicating. So I have the reserved style, which is me normally. In French, we say posé. I'm relaxed, share my thoughts, listening to you, criticizing you, having rebuttals. And I have the second approach, which is when I go on the offensive. And honestly, I think when I go on the offensive, people mischaracterize my ideas. So they give my ideas personalities that they don't have. That is something I learned. When you are communicating with people, no matter how passionate you are, you should take a more relaxed approach. Why do I argue this? And do I say that passionate arguments and heated debates have no place in society? Certainly not. But I'll tell you this. The person who is most relaxed is considered to be the person who has the most solid points. As weird as this sounds. That is why, if you go into our societies, when people are arguing, the king or the ruler or the leader does not necessarily raise his voice as well, but he calls them to order. The linguist normally bangs his rod, boom, 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 and the king speaks with a very soothing tone. It expresses a level of authority. So that is a lesson I've learned. So, today's podcast, it was to share with you the arts and styles of communication. And hopefully you and I will be able to learn and improve upon our communication styles to be able to better transmit the ideas we have in mind. Remember, no matter how great an idea you have, if you do not communicate yourself well, you would have lost the idea and the joke will be on you. I hope this podcast has brought you some value, and I hope you've learned something from my mistakes and my experiences. Until I come your way next time, my name is Prince Tego. Cheers.